Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Barely Bookish podcast. Today, we're going to be continuing on with Kindred, and we're going to be reading the chapter titled "The Storm" with Candace.
Hi.
So right away, we know there's a storm.
Yes, a big one.
Starting off, we find out that Kevin made it back to present day, but he had to fall on her to do so. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think he had to. I think because all he has to do is kind of touch her, right? Like,
Yes, in theory,
mm-hmm,
he just has to give one little paw
mm-hmm.
onto her body, and then he goes with her. But he chose to fling his entire weight on this woman's back that's just been shredded to bits.
Yeah. I mean,
Which
I guess in a
that's fine, I
panic.
guess.
Yeah, in a panic, I might do that too. But I'm also not crushing someone who is significantly smaller than me,
Yeah,
who's
I agree.
also been brutally beaten. So, we all have our things, I guess.
Listen, I mean, I think that he was just desperate to not go home. I mean, to like not have to stay there, just
That's
desperate to
fair.
go home. Which like I can understand. I mean, he's
Mhm.
not had it like she talks about how he has like scars and stuff on his face and he's a little different.
Mhm.
Like even when he gets to the plantation, like he's very different.
Yeah.
So I think that it's just weird to consider like you've been somewhere for 5 years, right? Like I think
Mhm.
like I immediately put myself in the other person's shoes. Like you've been away from your real life for 5 years and then you have an opportunity to go back to your life. And this is somebody who like doesn't have kids, doesn't have a relationship with his family, doesn't
Mhm.
really have like a job that he consistently goes to.
Yeah.
So like that 5 year time is like starting over for that
Mhm.
person, because like they're not it's not like they are you know, like if my mom left for 5 minutes, but it was 5 years for her,
Mhm.
she would be dying to come home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She would be dying to come home.
Mhm.
But he's not dying to come home. He's dying to see Dana again, and he can do that in the past. So it's like, what does this mean for his future?
Yeah. Especially too because it's like Dana is his only real connection to the world,
Yeah,
and they don't have a good relationship either,
right.
you know?
I mean, they
So
think it's good.
I I mean, I know she thinks it's good. I don't know what he thinks,
That's true.
So it's like, does he really have any reason? Like, he very honestly could have just started his new life.
Yeah, he could have absolutely walked away.
Another thing is, we don't know if he's like cheated on Dana in those 5 years either.
We also don't know if maybe he did walk away because obviously he couldn't stay put at at the Waylands.
Yeah.
I don't know that like he ever really goes in depth about what made him leave, like
Hmm.
where he went, why he was there, like you know what I mean, like other than like adventure, like which is I guess
Yeah.
that's a reasonable qualifier for going on a journey or whatever
Hmm.
for most people. But when you are stuck in the past and the only person who can bring you home is at this farm is going to be landing at this farm, like you'd
Hmm.
think that he would go and be a school teacher in town or something.
Yeah, right. I was thinking too that like I don't know, man. Like further on when we get a lot more of Rufus is being like, you should just like leave your husband. I mean, there's a part of me that wonders if he did something at the Wayland farm.
Same.
Hopefully we
Same.
find out next chapter.
I'm dying to know.
Same. Same. Is there a book too? Can there be?
I wish. That'd be amazing. I mean, Marion Zimmer Bradley is dead and she comes out with new stuff all the time. So
So,
it would I honestly would not mind if Nettie Okafor or NK Jameson decided to like pick up the Butler mantle and
hmm
like write in her stead. I would not mind that at all.
me either. I
Yeah.
could get behind it.
Yeah.
I think I mean, I don't know. I Maybe I've read some NK Jameson. I can't think of what she's written right now though.
So I just I actually bought my mom this for her birthday.
Hmm.
It is called The City We Became, I
Oh,
believe.
I'm reading that right now. Yeah, that's why I know her name.
Yeah. So I bought that for my mom for Christmas. I haven't had a chance, or sorry, for her birthday. I haven't had a chance
Mhm.
to read it myself, but I'm going to borrow it the second she's done, obviously.
I haven't finished it yet. It's hard to read. because
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to wrap my head around. But
Mm-hmm.
like, I think about it more as symbolic literature, if that makes sense. And I
Mm-hmm.
know a lot of people, because I read it in a book club, a lot of people didn't really like it because it's not literal. So it's like these things happening, events happen, and they're like, it's hard to imagine this actually happening. But I'm like, if you think about this entire book as a symbol for these events,
So
more
it's
so.
it
Yeah.
is magical realism.
Yeah.
So if you walk in like a student of like Charles Delint, for example, I don't know if you've ever
Mhm.
read his stuff,
Mm-mm.
or Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Both of them are
Mhm.
big into magical realism. Isabel Allende also plays in that
Mhm.
pool too. She was also into like the House of the Spirits is all magical realism.
Okay.
Um, like Water for Chocolate, Laura Esquivel. That's
Mhm.
also um, an example of genre. I love magical realism because it allows you to kind of keep your foot firmly planted
Mhm.
in reality
Mhm.
while also kind of having half of you kind of go off and doing whatever, right? So like
Yeah.
The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, great
Mhm.
example of magical realism, especially because it's based on his own experience, like as a child,
Mhm.
and like what his perception was at that time in his life. So I think if you tried and reread it that way, like through that lens, you'll get more out of it just from what the first round of research that I did.
Mhm.
But I feel like this book also kind of plays in magical realism because
Mhm.
again, it's not quite sci-fi. You
Yeah.
know, sci-fi and I mean, there's other examples of sci-fi time travel that's like not strictly sci-fi, like the movie
Mhm.
About Time, right? That's about time travel, but it's a romantic comedy.
Yeah.
Um, really great movie, well done. But I think that that's one of those concentric circles that overlaps this book. It's like a little bit of horror, a little bit of a thriller, a little bit of a historical fiction, a little bit of magical realism, and a little bit of sci-fi all in one
Mhm.
200 and something page package.
Oh, another book I meant to tell you that you need to read is
Mhm.
A Song Below Water. I haven't read it yet,
Ooh.
but basically, what my understanding of this book is I listened to, she was a guest on a podcast I like, and she
Hmm.
was talking about how in her book, it's kind of like discussing, it's like YA, but it's discussing racism in a way of like using mythological creatures.
Okay.
So like all of the sirens are black women, and like everybody is more okay with like other people's and their like mythology, and then sirens are kind of outcasted, and it's like discussing that. And then she's like was talking a lot about how people would tell her, they're like, you didn't do a lot of world building, and she's like, the world around you is the world building. It's
Right.
not my fault that you don't know about it. And I was
Right.
like, okay, I gotta read it. So that's one that I'm about to read, and I like the cover so much that I'm just gonna recommend it already.
Excellent.
Yeah,
All right, I'll let you
but
know if I get it
do it because
or when
the
I get
city we
it.
became. The hard part about it, it did a lot of like, in Harry Potter, where like the Muggles have like a mist covering, so they don't see exactly what's happening.
Yes.
That was kind of the hard part for a lot of us because we're like, what's actually affecting? Because it's a lot of this is affecting, but in a weird, different way that like is hard to picture.
Hmm.
So it's a lot of that scenario. So you have to like kind of think of like what it symbolizes more than what's actually happening, if that makes sense.
It does.
So, we get sent back to the present day for
Hmm.
Dana, and she has to persuade our main man, Kevin, aka Dana's main man, because I still hate Kevin, to go back to bed because Kevin is like, the other hard part too is like that they spent no time in this house,
Yeah.
you know?
They were moved in for like 2 days or something.
Mhm. Like, they're still moving boxes, and, like, the only person that's actually spent time there is those 8 days that Kevin was stuck in the past for 5 years.
Yeah. I will say though, I like the contrast. Like when we first open on this chapter and
Mhm,
she's trying to coax him to like come to bed and like get some rest,
mhm,
it's definitely implied that she's also expecting him to do his husbandly duties for her as she expects as a
mhm,
wife. And I like how hesitant, he did earn some points,
mhm.
um, because he was like, oh no, I can't like lay in bed with you. I'm gonna hurt you. He's like trying to give
Yeah,
her the whole bed because he's like, I don't want to hurt you. I don't
Mhm.
want to like do anything that's going to cause you harm or cause you pain in any kind of way. Like I just want you to be okay. Like you need to sleep more than I do. And it's like the first time that he genuinely seems to put his needs and his desires above hers.
Mhm.
And she still has him come to bed because she's like, no, take your place in bed with me. Like I've missed you too, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the first time that he's actually like showing that kind of um letting her take the lead. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like allowing her to be the person who dictates what's next for them as a couple. And I think that that's a big point, especially contrasted with Rufus and Alice, right? Like we have
Mhm.
a very similar situation in the previous chapter where Alice is like beaten bloody and she's almost unrecognizable. He still insists on sleeping in the bed with her. He still insists on eventually having sex with her before she's even completely healed mentally. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's not her husband.
Yeah.
So like that was the one delineation I felt that was very strong, that kind of carved out that difference. Because before, you and I were even asking like, what's the difference between Rufus and Kevin? Like they
Mhm.
kind of both seem like entitled shits. But I think that like this is the moment where we see that like as disagreeable as I think Kevin is, and as I'm sure you think he is,
Mhm.
like there are worse alternatives, right? To
Yeah.
a guy who like again he trusts it, it's I think it's a matter of perception, right? Like to us, he's asking her to do his busy work and his clerical work, right? But
Mhm.
to Dana, like when I think what he means when he talks to Dana about it, like he sees it more as, oh, I'm gonna, I'm here with you and I trust you
Mhm.
with my work. I trust you with my writing, right?
Mhm.
Um, whereas like there's no such silver lining for Rufus. Like
Yeah.
not a one.
For sure. He's just like Rufus is like, I want something, so
I'm gonna take it.
yep.
Yeah.
And then Kevin's still doing the bare minimum, but like at least he's doing that, I guess.
Yes.
So, um we get flashed up to the next morning. Well, technically the middle of the night
Mm-hmm.
where Kevin's like, I don't feel like I'm home. He's turning on and off the stove counters. He's touching the TV, turning it on and off. Um, you
Yeah, he
know,
like can't figure out like what anything is or how to use it or
yeah,
where anything is. Like she catches him in the kitchen like looking for forks. He's like, "Where the fuck is everything?"
yeah.
The thing that like chilled me though was when she said that like she could overhear him like looking for stuff and banging around the kitchen
Hmm.
and that he sounded like Rufus and Tom because he has an accent now.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so then the past has changed him at least in one noticeable way.
Hmm. I know. And it's like, how did he get an accent as a 35-year-old man?
I mean, in 5 years, I
Yeah,
imagine part of it is probably changing the way he spoke to fit in. Like
probably.
I'm an extra person. I'm a ridiculous human being. And when
Hmm.
I was 16 years old, I went to London for 2 weeks with my high school marching band, and I was told that I was told that people get pickpocketed all the time there,
Hmm.
and that people only genuinely like generally people that get pickpocketed are tourists, right?
Hmm.
People that are obviously not from around here. So I watched like 2 months worth of British stuff, like Monty
Hmm.
Python, Mary Poppins, like every Disney movie that has a slightly British sounding person in it. Like
Yep.
I did all the research that I possibly could. Watched old episodes of like I don't know, like Anne of Green Gables and The Worst Witch, like
Hmm.
all kinds of ridiculous things. And then I got to England and I decided that like whenever I was out in public, I was going to speak in an English accent to make sure that nobody thought that I was American.
Oh
So
my
I
goodness.
picked up an accent in just 2 short weeks. Surely someone can pick up an accent in 5 long years. I'm going to give him a break for that because I also was eccentric and extra in my life.
I have that problem where because I am, you know, not great. I accidentally mirror everyone. So I have like that problem where I call it my little chameleon personality, but I guess it's technically called mirroring. So
Hmm.
like when people talk with an accent, I unintentionally just copy that accent back to them.
Same.
Yeah. I've done that with so many people who have like country accents
Yeah.
in restaurants when I'm serving them.
Yep.
It's not cute. Like, I can't stop it, though, and I
Yeah,
notice
but
when
it,
it's
it
too
probably
late.
does it give you better tips though? They probably
You
feel
know
really like a sense of camaraderie with you.
Yeah, no one's caught on. But I
Hmm.
think it's because it's like I usually am like, well, I always start with, "Hi, how y'all doing? My name's whatever, whatever, blah 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 blah." You know, I that's my like go-to server intro.
Hmm.
So the y'all already gets my foot in the door. Um, I don't know when I started saying y'all, but I can't stop it. So there's that. It's fine. I'm sure the worst part too is like I haven't had anybody on the podcast yet that's had it. Well, I had someone who had an Irish accent, but I haven't had anybody that I've copied their accent yet so far. So
Hmm.
we'll see how long that like track continues because it's
Okay.
not going to be very long. Like I get two British guests in the row, it's over. Like
Yeah.
I will be
Yeah.
copying that accent and I will
Suddenly
not be able to help it.
you're just early 2000s Madonna, and that's it.
Yeah, basically.
Hmm. There's nothing wrong with that.
It's fine.
No shame in the game.
If anyone wants to judge me, take it up with my brain because I would also like for it to not happen. Sometimes I'm not convinced the way I talk right now is what I would normally talk like if I didn't do that. But, there's
It
that.
just it just means you're a beautiful puzzle made up of several fine pieces. That's all.
Yeah. The hard part too is I had a British friend in middle school and I still call my mother mum. I
There's
don't
nothing
say
wrong with that.
I don't say ma. Well, sometimes I say ma, but I don't say mom. I have a
Hmm.
hard time getting my mouth around it now.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, this might be why I had to put Siri as British because she doesn't understand my
My
understanding.
Siri, my
Yeah.
Siri is also British.
Okay. Good.
Hmm.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The English one didn't understand me. I couldn't figure out why. I was like, whatever. We'll figure that out later. So it's just stayed British.
That's a good choice.
Yeah. Plus, it sounds fun when they like talk to me and tell me directions. I don't feel like I'm
I
being
don't like the
judged.
male ones though. I only like the lady ones.
I don't know what mine is right now.
Yeah, the guy's very forceful. I'm not into that.
Hey Siri. I have a woman. I haven't talked to her in a long time. I didn't remember. Okay, we're good. Anyways, so Kevin tells us that he was accused of helping slaves escape, which is why he grew out his beard in disguise. So that's his
Hmm.
reason for being away from the Wayland farm, I guess.
Yeah.
But here's my thing: everyone on the Wayland farm that we know did not escape. So who was he helping escape?
I think that he was helping slaves escape from everywhere that he was because he was in a variety of places. Like he
Okay.
went all around.
Hmm.
That's at least how I understood it. That it wasn't just on the Wayland farm,
Okay.
Wayland plantation.
Because it sounded like that's why he got kicked out of the Wayland plantation, and I was like, but all the Wayland like enslaved people are still there,
Hmm. Yeah,
So why did he really get kicked out? Who did he help out?
that's a good question.
Right?
Yep.
So, um, Kevin.
Oh, yep.
Oh, sorry.
Wait, I'm seeing
Hmm.
page 193 because I thought I remembered seeing something about it.
Hmm.
Because she asked him, "Were you at the Waylands when you were helping people leave?"
Hmm.
Um, so he said that he was at a school teaching. He got a job teaching.
Hmm.
And that's when he
Mm.
was accused of helping slaves to escape.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't really remember. But like, why did he get a job teaching? I don't know. Still sus about this whole thing. So Kevin goes into his office and just randomly punches his typewriter for no reason,
Yeah.
which I'm like, why? Like those things are expensive.
That one I actually understand. So the reason I think he punches his typewriter because
Mhm.
Dana says something about this like right after that. So neither of them can write about their experiences in the past when they
Mhm.
come back to the present. They can write when they're in the past, but they
Mhm.
can't write when they're in the present because Dana had a similar experience. I think the previous time that she came home,
Mhm.
she sat down with like a pencil and paper because I think Kevin brought her some. She was like, "Hey, bring me pencil and paper."
Mhm.
So she starts trying to write, and she just like threw out all of her pages like over and over and over again. Like everything
Yeah.
she wrote, she had to toss. So I think that's why I think he's in there trying to like write about how he feels and can't, and that's why he smashes it in rage.
Maybe.
He has a very different temperament than before. Before he was very like not happy go lucky, because I don't know that happy is really a word that I would ever associate with this person. He seems
Right.
so like so stoic.
Mhm.
Um and like not in a cool way. But I think that a lot has changed. Like you can tell that he's got fear in him. Like
Mhm.
even the TV, like when he turns the TV on, there's like a PSA about a pregnant woman. I remember that. Like that was very vivid for me. There's a
Mhm.
PSA about, pregnant women going to the doctor, getting, routine checkups. And he freaks out and asks her to turn it off right away. And
Mhm.
she's like, wait, what? Like Dana's like, why would you need me to turn it off? Is everything okay? She does so.
Mhm.
And he admits that like he watched a pregnant enslaved woman get beaten until she had her child. And then
Yeah.
after, and the cruelty that he watched.
Mhm.
And it's interesting to me that like this is the part where as like a black woman I can understand a lot more about where Dana is coming from,
Mhm.
because like I thought about it like in my situation, because my partner is also my partner is white too. So like
Mhm.
I thought about it kind of from my own perspective, like what would it be like if I were the person who were going back in time
Mhm.
and my partner Jason were in Kevin's shoes, right?
Mhm.
Because she says like, oh, maybe he got it worse, and my first reaction was like, how dare you, you're getting
Yeah.
your skin literally peeled off of you in strips.
Mhm.
Like people are trying to manhandle you, they're trying to rape you, they're trying to use your body. Like
Mhm.
there's been harsh punishment for you before, maybe not like super crazy harsh punishments, but like, I mean, obviously this chapter there's a whole other thing that happens that we're getting to in a moment, but things have been bad for her before.
Mhm.
um so I was like, how can you even compare that to what Kevin might experience as somebody with white skin, right, moving through the past? But I think when he talks about that moment, seeing that pregnant woman,
Mhm.
and she like looks at him and he like doesn't look the same. Like he looks away, he looks haggard and worn and sad and confused. And like it occurred to me that if you are a white person who feels like you are well meaning, which obviously like he's married happily, to him anyway, he seems happy. He's
Mhm.
married to a black woman in 1976. Like that's huge. Like my stepdad was still like ostracized for dating black women in 1976.
Mhm.
And even in 1989 when he married my mom, like that was a big deal. You know what I'm saying? And that's
Mhm.
1989. So like who, I can't imagine how ridiculous it must have been in 1976 for that kind of thing to happen.
Mhm.
Um so like he's someone who cares about people of all races. He's
Mhm.
someone who is, not a racist. He's not somebody who ascribes to that racist school of thought.
Mhm.
Um, and he has a black wife. And then
Mhm.
he has to watch all of these people that could be her descendants, that could be descendants of friends and family that she has, could be, the descent, the ancestors of people that he, works with, or that
Mhm.
he's, whatever, people that matter. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and he's watching them be bullied and bruised and victimized and murdered and raped and harmed and
Mhm.
tortured, you know what I mean? And he's powerless to really stop it
Yeah.
without ending his own life, and he has to stay alive for his wife. So it's just like 5 years of him going around being a man who doesn't ascribe to any sort of, inequality between the races, right?
Mhm.
And he has to just kind of sit back and watch this take place. Like, I can't imagine how traumatic that must be. Like, at least when Dana goes back, like, bad things happen to her and it's horrible,
Mhm.
but she's never really like, it's never unexpected. She might be surprised that she herself is going through it, but she's
Mhm.
not surprised to see like an overseer on a plantation. She's
Mhm.
not surprised to see like people, toiling in these fields until like their bodies break. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like none of this is surprising to her because she's black and she understands black history and she's
Mhm.
educated about these things. Like he only has the frame of reference of a book. Like a lot of
Mhm.
black people in this country still have like quilts that their great great grandma who was a slave made. You know what I mean? People think
Mhm.
that it was like a long time ago when it was really kind of just like 2.5 generations ago. It actually wasn't
Yeah.
that long ago. There are people that are still alive whose like grandma was a slave, like to this day. So,
Mhm.
it's not as far back as we would like to think it is, and even
Mhm.
more so in 1976. So for Dana, it's like, this sucks, but I'm in the past, and the past was a terrible and racist time, right? She
Mhm.
can get her head around it. This is somebody who's grown up maybe not even having that information, not even having that part of American history
Mhm.
to access, right?
Mhm.
Knows little to nothing about it other than maybe what his wife has taught him. and now he's seeing that happen and he is powerless to stop it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that wouldn't make somebody crazy.
Yeah. Plus, he has a savior complex to boot.
That's the worst part. He
Yeah.
feels like he can do something all the time and he literally cannot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, he's probably a very different person. He's
Yeah.
probably an extremely, there's going to be a long road to his recovery in 1976. Period. Like, he is obviously a changed man.
How do you even go to therapy? Like,
Good question.
after this, like, they both need it, but you can't be like, hey, yeah, therapist.
Yep.
So I was sent back to the antebellum South. They're gonna be like loony bin right now.
Yep. 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 Put him away forever.
Yeah.
And like she's trying to like what I admire about Dana, and I think that this the beginning of this chapter is like the most intimate I think we've ever really seen that couple,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because usually it's him like failing to console her and doing a
Yep.
really bad job trying to like be mindful and not being mindful at all and being like a
Mm-hmm.
bull in a china shop. And instead I think what we see here is like her finally just taking care of him and him allowing it.
I
You know,
know.
he doesn't seem to be like fighting her on
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it. And then when he finally has had enough, he's like, "Hey, I've had enough. I can't with you right now."
Yeah.
And that's a brutal moment.
Yeah. I mean, I that's the hard part too. Is it's like for someone who is likes to be comforted by my significant other,
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine being like in that moment you probably be like I just need to process my new reality for like a couple of minutes, and then they're like your partner just gets taken back into the past,
Yeah.
like right after all this stuff, like he's still trying to process being home. She's
Yep.
home for like matters of minutes,
Yeah.
and
It's like overnight, right? And
mhm,
then like she's gone.
yeah, like also Dana talks about how she set out pork chops 2 months ago to make dinner, and they're still frozen because she
Right.
wasn't back long enough.
Right.
Yeah, and another thing too is like we have no idea how long Dana's going to be gone either. So like when she gets sent back in the past, like she could be gone for minutes, she could be gone for days. It doesn't We don't know.
Right. Yeah, in her time, I think like it seems like there's no, and I think we talked about this a little bit last time too. There's like no rhyme or reason to how long she's been in the past versus how long she's been away from the present. So
Mhm.
like you said, she's like, "Oh, 2 months ago in my time, I took these pork chops out to thaw,
Mhm.
but it's been like a day in
Yeah.
my actual life or a couple of minutes in my actual life." So, when I think about that, like she can't even, neither of them really can even try to calculate,
Mhm.
you know what I mean, how much time. Like when she vanishes and he's like, "Oh no, she's gone." He doesn't know if it's going to be like 5 seconds
Yeah.
that she's back because it has been before. It's been 5 seconds, it's been an hour, you know
Mhm.
what I mean? So, it's been 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
like it's completely erratic. Like 2 months doesn't equal like an hour. She can't even figure it out on her end how long she's going to be gone. There's no correlation.
Yeah, and I think too is like if I was in those shoes, if I was Kevin and I was stuck there 5 years without my partner, like I'd probably just keep like a one of those like little hand journals on my person, like
Mhm.
as my comfort object, even if you don't write in it very much. Like, and also too, because he's gonna need time to process his reality. You shouldn't be like after traumatic events, people don't normally go back to work right away.
Right.
He
You
needs
take a
some
minute.
time.
Yeah,
And
he
like
absolutely does.
they needed time as a partner, as a like a partnership, but I guess they're not getting that right now.
Yep.
Well, he might, she won't.
It's very scary. Like it's very scary. Like they are robbed of some additional time and like
Hmm.
who knows what's going to happen when he's on his own.
Yeah.
If this ends up being like a full day that she's gone, right? For the first
Hmm.
time ever, she's gone for a full day or something.
Hmm.
Like how is that going to work?
I'm
You
a
know?
little worried he's gonna want to be left in the past next time.
Me too.
That's my scary, nervous bit.
Me too. I am equally concerned because I feel like this experience has helped him understand her
Hmm.
better, right? Like slavery and discrimination and injustice and prejudice is not something that like I carry around as a black person every single day
Yeah.
knowingly,
Hmm.
right? It's not something I'm thinking about. I don't go to the store and like put a can of beans in my shopping cart and think about it. Like it's
Mhm.
not, you know what I mean? Like I do like what I have to do for work today, you know, what am I recording this week? Like it's not like a, you know, a conscious thought,
Mhm.
but it's definitely something that comes up. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? There it's definitely something that, you know, there's a conversation. Like for example, when I see somebody online that like I went to high school with
Mhm.
and they've done less with their life and worked about 30%, you know, to worked as hard as me by about 30%, right? Like they
Mhm.
haven't really tried to succeed and they don't have a career and they're kind of just like limping along in life,
Mhm.
but they have a house and a backyard and a dog and you know what I mean? And then you
Mhm.
see like, oh, that's generational wealth.
Mhm.
So then I have to think, oh, generational wealth. That's right. Okay. You know what I mean? And that
Yeah.
immediately brings up why you don't have it. Or like the other day, somebody asked me, they were like, oh, can you, I'm doing a role playing game set in the past, right? Set in like the 1800s, and they were like, "Oh, can you find a picture of someone from the 1800s that you'd like, you know, as your avatar, a child, right?
Mhm.
Late 1800s." And I was like, "Sure, no problem." And to me, that's like an interesting setting, whatever. Like I'm cool with that. Like I wasn't offended or anything by that. Like I was like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, that's cool." But then like after 5 minutes of searching, I'm getting like only pictures of like pickaninnies and you know stereotypes of black children from that time because
Yeah.
black people had to like pack up and move all the time. They didn't necessarily have, other than like again quilts and blankets and things
Mhm.
like that that they could pass down. But for the most part, like black families didn't have, you know, the agency to kind of build on things and have like heirlooms and stuff
Mhm.
the way that you know other like you know white Anglo-Saxon people in this country have been able to, right? So then I have to like go back to this gaming group and be like, hey guys, so is it okay if I just like use a picture of myself but like I doctor it to make it look old so that I don't have to have this conversation? And then someone's like, well, why don't you just find any old picture? It's so easy, just Google it. So then I have to Google it and take a screenshot and show them how like there's only two pictures of children and
Yeah.
only one of them is nice and it's not high res. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
because that person isn't, and it's that this isn't a bad person or a
Mhm.
person that you know doesn't have my best interest at heart. They're a gem. They're a sweetheart.
Mhm.
It just doesn't occur to them because that's not their family's experience. That's not their experience. So it doesn't occur to them that I might have a hard time finding what I'm looking for
Mhm.
because of the history of this country. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it's I think that Kevin is on his way to kind of understanding where Dana is coming from. And I'm hoping that like he will never ask her to do his clerical work ever again because now I
Literally.
think he understands what that means when he asks, you know what I mean? What that really means when
Mhm.
he asks her to do that stuff. Like it's like she's less important than him.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping that this at least cured him of that terrible habit.
I'm telling you right now, if I was in Dana's shoes, the second he said something, I'd be like, it's funny that you asked that because Rufus also asked me that.
Word. Word. That's
Right?
exactly what I would say.
Like, I just, uh, yeah, yeah. I really hope that this, and like, honestly, he could use this to fight for a lot of change in 1976 too, because obviously at that time, I don't exactly know what was happening, but I know that, like, there's a lot of rights that, it's not an equal rights society at that point.
Yep.
Um, I don't, I don't know. Can women vote at that point?
No.
Women voting. There you go. When did women
Yeah.
get to vote? 80s?
I feel like it was actually the early 1900s. Hold on a second. Let me double check on that information.
When were suffragette? When did Mary Poppins come out?
Okay, yeah, 1920.
1920.
Yeah, so it was passed by Congress in 1919 and then ratified in 1920. It's the 19th Amendment.
Okay.
So yeah, a long time. I should know that because they talk about it on Downton Abbey. I'm pretty sure that, like, I think Lady Sybil is like the American women. I think she talks about it.
So they already have the right to vote. I don't know. If there's things he could do. When did I don't know. Okay. So black men and women were barred from voting from around 1870 to the Civil Rights Act of 1965. I don't know.
Hmm.
There's things he could do. I don't something he could do. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in that time period, but something.
That's what's so wild. Like, there's nothing that he could do. You see what I'm saying? And like a
Yeah.
lot of people didn't even realize that it was an issue. Like
Mhm.
1965, right? Black women were finally able to just like vote anytime, any place, anywhere
Mhm.
that they wanted, right? No big deal. Because Jim Crow was established to make sure that black people would have a very hard time voting, which is a lot
Mhm.
of what we're seeing right now with all of these new voting acts and stuff. And gerrymandering and everything like that, right?
Mhm.
To try to kind of skew things so that Black people's voices are minimized, right? Or
Yeah.
people of color's voices are minimized by excluding those communities, saying, "Oh, you can't vote on Sundays," even though people usually go after church, things
Mhm.
like that, that are very thinly veiled racist line items. So, like, when you kind of put things in perspective and you realize that, like, Black women couldn't comfortably vote until the 1960s, it's like, okay, well, maybe we should start focusing on that
Yeah.
and remembering that and recognizing that it's within someone's lifetime. That means some people's
Mhm.
parents and grandparents were around when didn't have the vote. Like,
Yeah.
your grandma that you talked to during the holidays, you know what I mean, could vote before I could have. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Before anyone in my family could have. Like, my mom was born in 1960. So that means when she was born, Black women weren't even slightly as equal as they should have been. So,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like, there's so much progress that we've made, but it hasn't happened quickly.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of pushback on recognizing that because people don't want to admit that they were part of the problem.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, because they're still alive. Like, we can talk about the old stuff until we're blue in the face, but like the new stuff, like Jim Crow and segregation and things like
Mhm.
that, like, nobody wants to have that conversation because they were there and enabled it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just trying to think of something that we could give for Kevin to do so that he didn't want to go back in the past. I was like, maybe there's something he could fight for, but I don't really know enough about 1976 to be like, yeah, he could have been doing this.
I mean, he could definitely, be in those streets doing protests and stuff, right? Trying to
Mhm.
be his best self, right? He could do all of that.
Yeah.
But I think that right now he needs to just, like, take a seat
Yeah.
and
Cope.
think long and hard about his actions over the
Yeah.
last 5 years. That's what I think he needs to do, is
Yeah.
just kind of like come correct on this life he's made for himself, like,
Mhm.
especially like as Dana starts to fade and he realizes that she's leaving. Like, thank God he gets her go bag in time.
Mhm.
Like, that was a close call. Literally seconds before she disappears, she has the bag in her hand.
Uh,
I honestly feel like it was too much for him too, because he doesn't grab her.
yeah, that's
He
fair.
does not touch her hand. He just puts it in her hands, and then she goes. Like, he
Yeah.
doesn't even try to go with her this time, which I was like, we're learning.
I know. I was like,
Good
thank
job, Kevin.
God. It took that. It was very hard to get you back.
Oh
So,
my God. He's like, never again. Please, Jesus, take me as far away from here as possible.
especially because, like, at this point, we can't count on Rufus to get word to Kevin. So, if he gets stuck in the past ever again, there is no guarantee that she'll be able to get hhim back to the present day.
Can you imagine if they both went back to the past and somebody killed Dana? Then what?
Right? I don't even know. I don't
Let's
even.
not even imagine.
I
Let's
Yeah.
not even imagine that craziness.
Like,
Oh God.
he'd just be stuck there.
Yeah. Yep.
Ugh. Could you imagine being sent back to, even for me, like, even going as back as far as the 80s, like just being sent back there and being like, "Oh, we're stuck here now. Good luck."
I'm not gonna lie to you. I could make a killing in the 80s. I would have been all right.
I would not be.
I'd be okay in the 80s.
I would very much not be okay.
I have all my mom's stories about all the cool stuff she used to do, so I'm armed with knowledge in the 80s. Really, in the 80s, you just had to have like killer hair, and I can do that.
My entire job was invented around the time of the brewing of the internet. Like, what would I do for work? I guess
Well, I
I'd.
mean, I imagine you'd be a server.
Oh no, 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 no,
I
no.
guess that would be your job.
Uh,
I mean, what's the equivalent to a social media manager?
right?
Event planner.
I guess.
Because
Yeah.
social media was like, here's a flyer for a party. Do you want to go to this?
I know. I guess I'd be like, I'd really have to try my hand at copywriting again. I'd be like, okay,
Yeah. Well,
maybe.
I mean, it would be okay because you could drink and smoke in your office in the 80s. So
Oh, dude, I would
you'd
be,
have a great time.
I'd be a raging alcoholic. I'd be like, in my
Yeah.
time, I could have Googled this. Let me go down to the library real quick.
Yep. Do you have Dewey Decimal System? Because there isn't even that awesome, like, easy
Oh,
learn. Yeah, that easy learn
yeah.
thing, that the easy file that the library has now, that didn't exist. You still had those little card catalogs, the little
Oh
paper.
no.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna survive. I'm gonna be honest. I It's never been so glaringly obvious to me that I'm a Gen Z until this very moment where I
Hmm.
realize I couldn't survive. Like yeah, I could. I mean, I just would
You'd
hate it.
figure it out. It would take you a minute
It
though.
would take me I would be working with coworkers and I'd be like, in my day I could have googled this and people would be like, what?
You have to go find Bill Gates and be like, listen,
I was
I
like,
know
can you
you're
invent
cooking
this a little
something up in this
earlier?
garage. I
I
need
just
you to step on it.
I like walk out to the ground and be like, give me early access, please. I beg you.
Here's $25.
Yeah.
Can I please be an early backer of this Kickstarter Google campaign? He's going to be like, none of that makes sense.
Yeah, right. I'd be like, have you heard of GoFundMe? I'm honestly, if I got sent back in the 80s, there'd be a large part of it would be like, okay, vampires, if you exist, I'm gonna need to know right now because I want to see 2021 again. So,
I got to catch up.
yeah, please just stick it in there. Like I'm ready to go. Just let me know, hit me up at that point because oh no 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 no.
Yeah. Anxiety inducing just to think about it.
Be like, hi, yeah, I do a podcast, and they'd be like, what's that?
An audiobook, but different.
Yeah. God, I'd have to find it like to listen to audiobooks, I'd have to have a tape machine.
You sure would.
I can't. I can't do
Lucky
it.
for you, there are cassette players everywhere,
Yeah.
especially the iconic yellow Walkman.
Oh my god.
That's what you need. It's got real skinny headphones. You'll know it when
Oh.
you see it.
I know what that Walkman looks like. Guardians of the Galaxy got my back there.
Yeah.
Um oh dude. You know how many like freaking Marvel comic books I would buy and never open?
Oh, all of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
Every single one.
Yep.
I'd be raking it in.
You get a first edition of The Killing Joke.
I would have so
Whatever
many
you
first
want.
editions.
Whatever you want. Watchmen, all that stuff.
Yeah. Dude, I'd be the most wealthy vampire in 2021. Okay.
Yep.
I'd be like, hold on. All of this never open. I'd have like houses filled of just like
Star
those
Wars toys.
Star Wars toys,
Yep.
those freaking, what are those called? Beanie Babies. So many of
Oh,
those.
nobody cares about Beanie Babies. Don't waste your time. I have friends that are very poor now because they were not able to sell their Beanie Babies at a time when people cared.
Yeah, but like, don't they sell them? Like, wasn't it really popular in like 2010?
It was for a minute. It came back for like 5 seconds and then it
Yeah.
disappeared again into
In
the
those
ether. And
5 seconds, I'd make so
I don't
much
think
money.
I don't think it's ever coming back because
I don't
they're
think so either.
worthless. Worthless.
Yeah. I would just have a lot of like fan memorabilia. And then
Mhm.
people be like, why do you have like such a horrid stockpile? I'd be like, don't question me. Anyways.
Don't worry about my business.
Yeah. So she gets back in time. It's downpouring. She sees Rufus laying face down in a puddle, which how do people get that drunk that they can't even turn their bodies over? Like, isn't that baby instinct,
So I've seen such things in my life.
Uh-huh.
I still do not comprehend them.
I
I've never been that drunk, nor do I ever plan to be,
Mhm.
because I'm afraid of throwing up on myself
Yeah.
or someone else. But yeah, that's pretty dang drunk.
Mhm.
Now, granted, a lot of these people I think are drinking like moonshine and corn liquor and
Yeah.
stuff, and like Everclear basically before it's Everclear. So
Mhm.
who knows how trashed he was?
Yeah.
My first instinct when I read that he was like face down in the mud, I was like, do not go to him.
I know. I was like, oh no, I simply did not see.
Do not go to him. See what happens.
Yeah.
Maybe if he dies, you'll get sent back to the future.
I mean,
You'll just look a little different when you get there. I
right?
don't
Like,
know.
oh no. I mean, honestly, as soon as, later on when we find out that Hagar is born, I would never save him again.
Yeah. Same.
Oh no.
Yeah. I mean, who's gonna miss him?
Yeah. So Rufus is annihilated. She got him sitting up. He throws up on himself as well as Dana.
Disgusting.
Yeah, and then she's goes back and gets Nigel so that Nigel can carry him in. And he throws up all down Nigel's back. And I'm like, ew.
Yeah. TMI, guys.
Yeah. Like, there's so many worse things that happen in this book, but this part I'm just like, ew. Like,
Yeah.
Rufus has no, like, I don't, how does he get in so many situations where he could die?
Oh, because he's reckless. And
Yeah.
because of the time period too, like anybody could die from anything back then, man.
Yeah.
Like all kinds of stuff. You could die from like a fractured ankle if like there's like a bone that sticks out of your leg,
Hmm.
if you have a paper cut, if you have a cold that's too bad,
Hmm.
if you get wet in the rain, like anything could kill you back then, man. It was like it was just hit or miss whether or
Hmm.
not you stuck around, like really. And
Tell.
I feel like that kind of like cutthroat, do or die kind of world very
Hmm.
much heavily informed who we are as like an American country, right? As America. Like
Hmm.
America is very like, like I feel like for a long time when I was a kid, it was something that I considered, admirable.
Hmm.
But the older I get, I'm like, okay, well, this whole like, strike out, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, dust yourself off, try again. Like, get out there. You're American. We can do it, right? Like, I still feel that way about my country because I feel like this country has been through so much and we've made a lot of advancements. But sometimes I'm just like, not everybody takes that advice, especially the rich people
Yeah.
who are in charge of running this country. Sometimes they need bailouts, which we discussed, I think, last time.
Oh yeah.
How people are spending all kinds of money in places that they don't need to, right? So I feel like that's that spirit, that vibe of, you can do whatever you want, right?
Hmm.
That like white male energy, white cis male energy.
Hmm.
I feel like this is where it's born, right?
Yeah.
You've got people that will do whatever you tell them to do out of fear
Hmm.
and out of concern for the well-being of themselves and their family, right? And like even for Nigel, like I read that a couple of times because I was so horrified. Like throwing up to me is like the worst thing that could probably happen to you,
Yeah. Yeah.
other than like a bug being on you of some kind.
Ugh.
Um, like I'd rather get pooped on by a bird than throw up. 100%. Like
Yeah.
it's
Especially when
like
it's not
incomparable.
yours.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like get out of here, right? So, um I read it like 2 or 3 times and I was just like, it's down his back, it's on his clothes, it's
Ugh.
probably on his feet. This is
Yeah.
terrible. Like it really hung me up. And then I was like, oh, he doesn't care because like there's so much worse.
Hmm.
Like literally, there are worse things for him.
Yeah.
So this doesn't matter. Like this is a man who used to sleep, on the bare floor of an attic. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
what is gross to him is probably so different than what's gross to us.
Hmm.
Like I can't even imagine. And like I'm not a wealthy person. I'm like I come from an upper middle class family,
Hmm.
maybe slightly wealthy now.
Hmm.
But like I come from an upper middle class family. I myself am like middle class to upper middle class, right? I work a white collar job. I sit at a desk, that kind of thing. But like there are things that I deal with and that you deal with, right, as a
Hmm.
younger person who's like starting your life and like breaking out into your career and everything, right?
Hmm.
There's things that we put up with that we have to deal with
Yeah.
because we don't have the money to have someone else do it for us, right? And it seems like a small luxury,
Hmm.
but then when you compare it to like this scene with Nigel where he's just walking around with throw up all over him and he like drops this dude off in his bed and like doesn't immediately try to change. Like I mean, somebody threw up on me once. My brother threw up on me. I think it was like Christmas time,
Hmm.
and I had never been like in my underwear around my dad because I was like, I'm 10 years old. I'm too old for this, right?
Hmm.
I stripped all of my clothes off in the middle of the living room on Christmas morning. Did not care who saw me.
Hmm.
Like, I think I'd probably have the same reaction if somebody threw up on me in public. I would just like be without whatever article of clothing
Hmm.
that they threw up on. I wouldn't even care. Like, I would just be like, someone barfed on me. I can't have this on me. And this man is just hanging out, like, waiting to find out if he's okay with the barf on him still. And I'm just like, see, so this is what we call first world problems, Candace,
Yeah.
where you take your shirt off because somebody is thrown up on you. That's like
See, I had
the
someone
tiniest of issue.
I had someone hock a loogie on my jacket. Like,
Ah,
yeah. And it was one of those like really nasally ones too. I
no.
contemplated throwing the jacket away.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand
I
that.
took it off and then
Well, I mean, it's ruined, right?
right? I was like, and because it was like at a third period too. And I was like, I want to have to carry this around all day.
Yeah, yeah. This is what I mean. Like it's just it puts so much in perspective. Like
Hmm.
this book gives so much perspective. I mean, even frontiers people, right?
Hmm.
I know that like, you know, people that were pioneers, like they had really hard lives, you know, especially because they were basically test subjects. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like pioneers were sent to go do the job nobody else wanted to do. Like, go out to California and see if there's food. And if there's not, oh well, guess you're not
Good
coming
luck.
back. Like that was literally how they would treat pioneers, you know,
Yeah.
like you're poor, you can't stay here, so go find somewhere else to be, I guess. You know,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully it's not hard living. You got a rock and a shovel and some twigs. Matches aren't invented yet. Hope you find some flint. Like crazy, right? Just like be out on your own, minimal supplies.
Mm-hmm.
Like even that, like that's not slavery at all. Like you still have free, you know, freedom of choice and free will over your body and
Mm-hmm.
self governance and all that stuff. Like obviously it's nowhere near, you know, what slavery was, but that's a step up from slavery, and I still couldn't imagine that.
I'm still
Like
thinking
I'm
about
a
it too.
big baby.
It's like thinking about it too is like I'm also a woman, so like if
Hmm.
I was sent back in time, they would expect me to be one escorted around,
Yeah,
and I don't have any family, and I wouldn't let Daniel come back with me because
of course not.
obviously,
Yeah.
like that's what do what do
You're just supposed to be quiet, I think. If you're a white woman in this time period
hmm
and you are not rich and the lady of an estate,
yeah,
um, even if you are the lady of an estate, Margaret Whalen is the lady of that estate, and she's still told to shut the fuck up. So,
yeah,
you know what I mean? She's still hit. She
hmm
still gets hit. She still gets probably sexually assaulted. Like women have been sexually assaulted by their husbands for centuries. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Until it was like outlawed, and even in some states, I feel like it's probably still like a very soft law, like
hmm
spousal abuse. Because back then, like women were also kind of property, right?
hmm
They were a kind of property. They weren't property the way that maybe a slave was, but they certainly were expected to do whatever their husband required of them, right?
hmm
So, like, for you, I imagine it would be like that. Like, someone would be like, why isn't she married? And then, like, send you around to people's houses to find somebody who wanted to marry you. Even though they were not related to you at all,
yeah,
you had to be married or something was wrong with you, and they would just kind of take you and
yeah.
do what they wanted.
I
You know
kind
what
of
I mean?
wish
They'd marry you to somebody.
I wish I could get Octavia Butler to also write that book.
Yeah.
Because I would be interested. I wouldn't trust anybody else with her with this except for her. But like, what would that even look like?
Yeah.
It's like even if you went a little bit closer to like 1800s, if you sent someone back to 1800s, you know, you just kind of get dropped in there. And would you have to have like a second husband in the 1800s? Because obviously, like, they're not just gonna let you do your own thing.
I feel like the answer is yes, especially because like Outlander is kind of a version
Hmm
of these events that's less harsh
Yeah.
and more romancy.
hmm
Um and I think that is what happens to her. I think Claire has a husband
hmm
in 1920 or whatever year she's in, right?
hmm
And then she also has like a love interest from the time period she flashes back to.
I did want to
Um
do that too on Patreon. If you're interested, we could do the movies or the book.
what, Outlander?
Yeah, like
Okay.
the TV show. I guess I wanted to just do like a
I can do
season.
season 1 of that.
Yeah, we do like a
Yeah.
season one, talk about it in
I
comparison.
saw the first 2 episodes, and I if I'm doing it for a reason, which is what this is, I will absolutely stick with it. But
Uh-huh.
just like as like a casual viewer, I
Mhm.
was just like, this
Eh,
is white people stuff. No offense. It just
not
doesn't
taken.
like, it doesn't get me. And I know I have Scottish and Irish people in my family, so like technically it does have something to do with me.
It's fine.
But
There's the number of times that Daniel and I go and say this seems real white people shit.
yeah.
Well, it's a little too often.
Yeah. Hoping that starts to change. It's looking like it's changing.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the Barely Bookish podcast. If you want some exclusive access to episodes and, exclusive monthly episodes, early access to every episode that comes out, please consider joining the Patreon. You can join for as low as $1, and everything's donation based, so you all get the same benefit no matter what tier you join at. But yeah, so next month, our Patreon episode is going to be the Kindred graphic novel. So that'll be out on the first Friday of April. I'm pretty excited about that. And I will be joined again by Candace. So, yeah. please consider joining so you can listen to that. And this month's was Pride and Premeditation, which was very good and a whole lot of fun. So if you haven't read that yet, please read it. If you liked Pride and Prejudice, you're going to really like this one. It is one of my favorite retellings so far. So I'm very hyped for Sense and Second Degree Murder to come out. And yeah, I cannot wait to read it. If you want to find me, I'm at Barely Bookish on literally everything. And Candace is at Candace the Magnificent. So please follow them. They are great. And yeah, thank you all so much for listening. Our theme song was by Raphael Crux. Our logo was designed by my little sibling Sarah. And I'll catch you guys next week. Bye.